In the heart of Mbale, a small but lively town, Zuberi and Kaina lived a quiet, simple life. They didn't have much, just a small house, a few chickens, and big dreams. But what they lacked in money, they made up for in love. Kaina stood by Zuberi through the hardest times. When he had no job, she would wake up early, cook food to sell in the market, and return home late just to put something on the table. She never complained. She believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. Kaina didn't just support him. She helped raise their children with deep love and strong values. She washed, cooked, taught them respect, and stayed up with them when they were sick. Their little home, built with hands and hope, was filled with laughter and warmth. Every stone in their house had a story. Every crack held a memory. Zuberi slowly started a small business selling tools. Kaina was the first person to cheer him on. She counted every coin, helped him budget, and prayed for his success every night. And then, success came. The business grew. Money started to flow in. They bought better clothes, a bigger house, and even a car. But as Zuberi's pockets grew heavier, his heart grew distant. He stopped noticing Kaina's tired eyes, her quiet sacrifices, or her aging hands. He started dressing sharper, talking bigger, and walking around like he was above the life they had built. And soon, his eyes began to wander. Zuberi's life had changed. With money in his hands and pride in his heart, he started spending more time in fancy hotels and business events. It was at one of those events in Lusaka that he met Nyasha. She was young, beautiful, and full of charm. Her laughter was soft and sweet, and her eyes sparkled every time she looked at him. Unlike Kaina, who knew the struggles behind his success, Nyasha only saw the polished man he had become. And that made Zuberi feel powerful, wanted, admired, special. At first it was just friendly talk, but soon Zuberi found himself thinking about her all the time. He started visiting Lusaka more often, making up excuses to stay overnight. He smiled more around Nyasha than he had in years. She praised him, told him how smart and strong he was, and made him feel like a king. And slowly, that feeling poisoned his heart. He began comparing Kaina to Nyasha. Where Kaina's hands were rough from years of hard work, Nyasha's were soft and manicured. Where Kaina reminded him of where he came from, Nyasha made him forget it. Zuberi began to distance himself from his home. He stopped coming back early. He stopped talking to Kaina. He stopped noticing the pain in her eyes when he ignored her questions or when he pulled his hand away. He convinced himself he deserved better now. After all, hadn't he worked hard? Didn't he build this new life on his own? He forgot the woman who once sold food barefoot just to support him. He forgot the mother of his children, the woman who built him up when he was nothing. He saw Kaina as part of the past, too simple, too plain, too ordinary for the man he believed he had become. Nyasha, with her beauty and attention, became his new world. Zuberi, lost in pride and blinded by desire, couldn't see the storm that was quietly forming behind him. He was stepping away from the love that had held him together all his life, and in chasing something shiny and new, he was slowly breaking the heart of the one person who truly knew him. One quiet morning, as the sun rose over Mbale, Kaina was making breakfast like she always did. Warm tea, fried cassava, and soft music in the background. Zuberi walked in, silent and cold, holding a brown envelope. He didn't say much, just placed it on the table and said, "It's over." Kaina wiped her hands, confused, thinking maybe it was about work. But when she opened the envelope, her heart dropped. Divorce papers. Her hands trembled. "Zuberi, what is this?" she whispered, her voice barely holding together. But he didn't even look at her properly. He just said, "I've made my decision. I want a new life." No explanation, no discussion, just cold words from the man she had once loved with her whole soul. Kaina broke down. Tears rolled down her face as she begged him to think about their children. What about them? What will we tell them? After everything we've built, everything we've been through, you're just walking away? Her voice cracked as she spoke. She reminded him of the days they had slept on the floor, the nights she prayed for his business to succeed, the sacrifices she made when they had nothing. But Zuberi's heart was gone. Maybe it had left long before the papers arrived. He had already made up his mind. He packed his bags, took the car, emptied most of the bank account, and walked out without a second thought. He didn't even say goodbye to the kids. Kaina sat on the floor that night, the divorce papers clutched to her chest, her children asleep in the next room. Her world had crashed in one moment. The man she stood by through fire and storm had betrayed her in the most heartless way, not just by leaving, but by taking almost everything they built together and handing it to another woman. It wasn't just a broken marriage, it was a broken promise, a broken trust. Kina was left with the house, the children, and a heart that had been shattered in silence. But even through the pain, she held her babies close and whispered to herself, "I will not break, I will rise again." Zuberi thought he had finally found happiness. After leaving Kina, he married Nyasha in a flashy wedding filled with music, lights, and expensive clothes. He felt proud, walking beside a woman so young and beautiful. People looked at them, whispered, admired, and Zuberi loved the attention. He believed he had upgraded his life, that he had stepped into a new chapter filled with joy and luxury. But soon, the mask began to fall. Nyasha wasn't interested in building a home. She didn't cook, didn't ask about his children, and never cared about the small, quiet things that once made Zuberi feel loved. All she wanted was more money, more parties, more expensive clothes, more trips. At first, Zuberi didn't mind. He was still caught in the dream, trying to prove to himself and the world that he had made the right choice. But little by little, Nyasha took over. She asked for access to his bank accounts. She started making big purchases without asking. New furniture, designer bags, even a car for her brother. When Zuberi tried to speak up, she'd laugh or get angry. "You said you give me the world. Now you're complaining," she'd say, rolling her eyes. He also noticed how she avoided his children. When they visited, she treated them like strangers, barely speaking to them. Eventually, she convinced Zuberi to stop inviting them. "They're part of your old life," she whispered. "You need to move on." And slowly, Zuberi did. He stopped calling them, stopped sending support, stopped being a father. At night, the house was quiet, not warm, like the one he once shared with Kina, but cold and lonely, even with all the luxury. Nyasha often stayed out late, coming home with perfume on her skin and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Zuberi started to feel something he hadn't felt in years: regret. The woman he thought would bring him joy had turned into a stranger living in his home, spending his money and draining his soul. He had traded love for beauty, but now the beauty had sharp edges, and the love, it was gone. Zuberi began to realize too late that he had left behind something real for something that was never meant to last. After the heartbreak, Kina knew she couldn't stay in Mbale. Everywhere she turned, she saw memories of Zuberi, their children's laughter, their once happy home. So, with nothing but a small bag, her sewing machine, and her children, she moved to Kitwe. It was a big change, a strange place, and she had no one there, but she carried something powerful within her: quiet strength. In Kitwe, Kina rented a tiny room at the edge of the town. The roof leaked when it rained, and there was barely enough space for her and the kids. But she didn't complain. She woke up every morning before sunrise, cooked for her children, got them ready for school, and sat by the window with her sewing machine. At first, she fixed torn clothes for neighbors, small jobs, barely any pay. But she did it with care, every stitch neat, every piece full of heart. Word spread. People started coming from all over town. "There's a woman who sews with magic in her hands," they'd say. Kina never overcharged. She listened to every customer, remembered their stories, and treated them with kindness. Soon, she had more clients than she could handle. What started as a survival job became a growing business. She rented a small shop and trained other women who had been left or broken, just like her. Kina didn't just earn money, she earned respect. People loved her for her honesty, her calm spirit, her strength. Her children watched her with pride as she slowly built a new life from the ground up. She didn't chase success. She didn't seek revenge. She just worked, loved, and healed. There were nights she cried quietly, thinking of all she had lost, but she wiped her tears, looked at her children, and whispered, "We're okay now." She may have lost Zuberi, but she had found something far more powerful: herself. In Kitwe, Kina wasn't just a tailor. She was a symbol of hope, a woman who turned pain into purpose. Her hands, once worn from struggle, now shaped her future with every thread. She had no riches, no flashy car, but she had peace, love, and a new kind of joy that no one could ever take from her again. At first, Zuberi didn't notice the cracks forming. His business still looked strong from the outside, but inside, things were falling apart. Orders slowed down, clients stopped calling, and debts started piling up. He tried to hide it, pretending everything was fine, but the money wasn't coming in like before. And Nyasha, she didn't care. While Zuberi struggled to keep the business alive, Nyasha was living like a queen. New dresses every week, expensive parties, nights out with her friends, and trips he couldn't afford anymore. When he asked her to slow down on the spending, she laughed. "That's your problem, not mine," she said, rolling her eyes as she walked away. The more the business failed, the colder she became. She stopped coming home early, stopped talking to him unless she needed money. Zuberi tried to hold things together. He sold his car, laid off staff, and even borrowed money just to pay bills. But nothing worked. Everything he had built was slipping through his fingers. Then came the final blow. One morning, he woke up to an empty house. Nyasha was gone. No note, no goodbye. Her clothes were missing. So was her jewelry. And worse, so was the last of his money. He later found out she had run off with one of his close friends, someone he had trusted. They had been planning it for months. Zuberi sat alone in that big, cold house, stunned. The silence screamed louder than words. His empire was gone. His wife had betrayed him. His friend had stabbed him in the back. He had nothing left, not even dignity. He thought about Kaina then, about the love he threw away, about the family he abandoned, about the woman who once fed him with her last coin and believed in him when no one else did. But now, it was too late. The man who once walked with pride and power was now surrounded by empty walls and regrets. The fall didn't happen overnight, but it hit hard. And as Zuberi sat in the ruins of his once perfect life, he realized the truth. He had traded gold for glitter, and all the glitter had blown away, leaving only dust behind. Zuberi had once been a man people respected, a man who walked through town with his head high, wearing clean suits and shiny shoes. Now, he walked with his eyes on the ground, hoping not to be recognized. His business was gone, the house sold to cover debts, and the few friends he had left disappeared when the money did. He was no longer a success story. He was just a man with nothing. Worse than losing money was losing his children. He tried to call, to visit, to explain, but they wanted nothing to do with him. They had seen how he treated their mother, how he walked out and forgot them like they didn't matter. They were polite, but cold. "We're fine, Dad. We don't need anything." Those words cut deeper than any insult. He had broken their hearts, and now they had locked the door. Zuberi sat alone most days, staring at the walls of his small rented room. He barely had enough to eat. The silence was heavy. No laughter, no footsteps, no warmth, just memories that played over and over again in his mind. He remembered Keena's soft voice, her tired hands making food late at night, her prayers for him whispered under her breath. He remembered the way she held him when things were hard, the way she believed in him when no one else did. And now he saw it clearly. She was the treasure, not the money, not the new wife, not the business. It had always been Keena, her love, her strength, her loyalty. But he had thrown her away like she was nothing. The pain of that truth burned more than the failure. It wasn't just regret. It was heartbreak. Not for losing wealth, but for losing the one person who truly loved him, the one he hurt the most. Zuberi had everything once, a family, a faithful wife, a future, and he traded it all for a dream that turned into a nightmare. Now, he was just a broken man, sitting in the ruins of his own choices, wishing he could go back. But some things, once lost, can never be returned. And that's when the real pain begins. Years had passed, and time had not been kind to Zuberi. His hair had gone grey, his body weak, and his spirit even weaker. He lived alone, barely noticed by the world he once ruled. Illness had crept in, slow and unforgiving. Some days, he didn't even have the strength to walk far. But on this day, something pulled him out of his small, lonely room. There was a community event in town, and he had heard it was about celebrating people who had made a difference. He didn't expect much. Maybe just a free meal and a place to sit for a while. He arrived quietly, sat in the back, and watched as people filled the hall with laughter and chatter. Then, the host called the name that made Zuberi sit up straight. Kaina! He thought he had misheard. But no, there she was, walking to the front with grace and confidence. The room erupted in applause. Zuberi stared, frozen. Kaina looked different, yet somehow still the same. Her smile was brighter, her posture strong. She wore a simple dress, but she shone like a queen. They said she was being honored for her work with widows and abused women. She had started a support center, helped hundreds of women rebuild their lives, and trained them in tailoring and small business. She had become a voice for the broken, the forgotten, the very kind of pain she had once lived through. Zuberi couldn't believe it. The woman he once left in tears was now standing in front of a cheering crowd, being celebrated. She didn't look bitter. She didn't look angry. She looked healed, whole, powerful in a quiet, beautiful way. Their eyes met for a moment. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away. She just nodded gently, as if to say, "I see you, and I've made peace." That simple look hit Zuberi harder than any words could. He lowered his eyes, his throat tight. He wanted to stand up, to speak, to say sorry, but he couldn't. His body was weak, but his heart was weaker. He realized in that moment he was looking at the woman he once broke, and she had turned her pain into purpose. While he had fallen, she had risen, not with revenge, but with grace, and that made her shine even brighter. After the event, Zuberi found the courage to approach Kana. His hands trembled, and his voice was soft, almost breaking as he spoke. "Kana, I'm sorry for everything, for leaving you, for hurting you, for losing sight of what really mattered." The words felt small coming from him, but they were heavy with regret. Kana looked at him calmly. She didn't smile, but she didn't turn away either. There was a kindness in her eyes, but it was not the same warmth he once knew. "Zuberi," she said gently, "I forgive you, not because I forgot the pain, but because I have learned to heal. Forgiveness is my way of freeing myself, not just you." Her voice was steady, full of strength. "You taught me a hard lesson, the kind no one wants to learn. You taught me what it means to stand alone, to fight when everything feels broken. Through heartbreak, I found my own power. I became more than the woman you left behind." Zuberi listened, feeling the weight of her words settle deep inside him. He had wanted her to hate him, to scream at him for the pain he caused, but she gave him something unexpected: grace. "I don't hold anger in my heart anymore," Kana continued. "I have learned that love is not about possession or promises broken. It's about respect, trust, and strength. You showed me what it means to lose those things, and because of that, I became who I am today." Tears welled up in Zuberi's eyes. For the first time, he saw Kina not as the woman he abandoned, but as a warrior who had fought through pain and come out stronger. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Thank you for teaching me independence, for showing me that sometimes the hardest pain is the greatest teacher." Zuberi wanted to say more, to ask for a second chance, but Kina shook her head softly. "This isn't about us anymore. It's about the lives we live now." He nodded, understanding that some chapters close forever. Kina had moved on, not because she forgot, but because she chose to rise, and that was a lesson he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Zuberi walked away from the community hall, feeling more alone than ever. His steps were slow, heavy with regret and sadness. He had lost everything that once made him proud: his business, his family, his place in the world. Now he was just a man empty inside, carrying the weight of all his mistakes. There was no anger left in him, no fight, only the quiet ache of knowing he had missed his chance to hold on to what really mattered. Meanwhile, Kana stepped outside with calm confidence. Her children ran to her, laughing and holding her hands tightly. They walked together down the dusty road toward the small home she had built with her own hands, a home filled with love, hope, and hard-earned peace. She didn't look back, not because she hated Zuberi, but because she didn't need to. She had already won. Kina didn't want revenge or pity. She had something stronger, healing. The pain that once tried to break her had made her stronger instead. She had found a new family, a new purpose, and a new kind of happiness. It wasn't flashy or loud, but it was real. As Zuberi disappeared into the distance, Kana smiled softly. She knew life wouldn't always be easy, but she was ready for whatever came next. She had learned that true strength isn't about holding on to the past. It's about letting go, moving forward, and believing in yourself. And in that moment, Kina was free. Not because she had everything, but because she had herself. That was enough.